Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Reactivation. I'm Jim.
I'm Tom.
And today we are going to check out a video. This is a video from a YouTube channel called Dark Docs. And a buddy of Tom's told him you ought to check this out. So we're going to give it a spin and see what we think. This is called Soldiers So Crazy They Were Eaten by Crocodiles Instead of Surrendering. So here we go.
Once remarkable territorial gains were now unraveling before their eyes. The Empire of the Right. By January of 1945, Japan's once remarkable territorial gains were now unraveling before their eyes. The Empire of the Rising Sun was being shoved back in every front, and in an ambitious strike, British and Indian forces launched Operation Matador, an amphibious thrust designed to capture the critical port of Chukpu in Ramri Island on the Burma front and begin their seizure of the landmass. The Indian forces then reached a stronghold defended by 900 Japanese, but just as the battle started, a British regiment outflanked the Japanese, who were forced to either surrender or retreat. The zealous Japanese servicemen, favoring anything over a dishonorable surrender, opted to retreat through a treacherous mangrove swamp filled with crocodiles. The unrelenting troopers had to endure disease, hunger, and treacherous waters as they sought to survive and outmaneuver their opponents. Still, the British were determined to take their Southeast Asian colony back, no matter the cost.
Cool
Taking Burma back. Often overlooked, the clash between Japan and China during World War II had far-reaching consequences for the global conflict and the geopolitical structure of Asia after it was over. After 1938, Japan and China were at a stalemate, with Japan unable to take additional territories from the Chinese. Then, in a shift in tactics, the Japanese decided to launch an attack on the Indochina Peninsula to isolate the Chinese and cut them off from foreign supplies coming from the Pacific. The move, however, angered the colonial superpowers that controlled several territories in the peninsula, specifically France, Britain, and the United States. As Japan invaded Burma, China and the United Kingdom signed an alliance to protect it from Japanese control. Britain reinforced the area from India, while China sent troops south to support the British. Despite their best efforts, the Japanese had delivered significant blows to key British military bases and airfields by 1942, giving them full air superiority over the region. Due to an unfortunate combination of catastrophic weather, Chinese troops' inexperience, Britain's unwillingness to commit forces to the region's defense, and Japan's raw strength and vicious use of chemical weapons, Burma finally fell to Japan by August. The situation remained unchanged for several months, but by 1943, the war effort on the Western Front had turned in favor of the Allied forces, and they now felt prepared to pay more attention to the situation in Asia. A much more combat-proficient Chinese army, trained by American and British forces, was able to launch a new campaign, and for the first time in the Sino-Japanese conflict, the Chinese were able to inflict more casualties than the ones they received. By 1944, the Japanese onslaught had seized the entire region and even threatened to pierce the Indian.
Isn't it crazy to see this kind of footage?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about close footage. Battle footage is battle footage, but like this kind of footage.
There were guys out there
that literally just did film.
Wow. Yeah.
While this was happening,
just bullets whizzing by their heads.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Sudden lung congestion come up on me all of a sudden. Wow.
And I didn't realize that Burma was such a big deal in World War II.
No kidding, huh?
Who would have thought?
The Indian border had been utterly reversed, and the Japanese Empire was now fighting to hold Burma from the Allies.
And
then,
awesome
as 1945 began, northern Burma was in Chinese control. Allied supply lines into China had been restored, and Britain and the US were determined to eradicate Japan's presence in the region. Consequently, Chinese and British forces pressed south in a synchronized effort to obliterate the Japanese troops. Operation Matador. One of the main objectives of the Allies when planning their amphibious attack from the south was Ramri Island, a 50-mile-long, 20-mile-wide flat landmass that seemed like a perfect choice to build air bases that could be used during the liberation of southern Burma.
Sure.
On January 14th, 1945, the 26th Indian Division was ordered to attack Ramri, with the plan set for a few days later, just as a Royal Marine Group from 3rd Commando Brigade invaded the neighboring Chiduba Island. Meanwhile, the Japanese defensive forces in Ramri consisted of the 2nd Battalion, 121st Infantry Regiment, with artillery and engineer detachments. The first stage of the assault was codenamed Operation Matador, and the objective was to capture Chiakpu at the north end of Ramri Island and the airfield near the port. Taking the port would severely weaken the enemy in the area, and it would serve as a staging ground for the rest of the attack. The Japanese knew a confrontation was coming, as British intelligence revealed they were setting up artillery units in caves along the coast to destroy the landing troops. In response, the Royal Navy assigned the battleship HMS Queen Elizabeth, the escort carrier HMS Amir, the light cruiser HMS Phoebe, and the destroyers Rapid, Napier, Norman, and Pathfinder to rain fire over the Japanese defensive positions before the landing operations. The shelling was highly successful, and by the time the 71st Indian Infantry Brigade began landing on the island's beaches, the Japanese capacity to respond had been severely crippled. Overwhelming advance.
There we go.
The following day, the 4th Indian Infantry Brigade took over the beachhead and swiftly occupied Chiakpu while...
I was going to say, when are we going to get to the
soldier,
the soldier eating, but I want to say it like that, but it's kind of wondering when you get to that. I mean, dang, we're already 5 minutes into it, but I get it. That explains why they are where they're at least.
Yeah.
Times like this, I wish I had a cough button, but this reality, baby, ain't adding shit.
Encountering little resistance. Then, on the 23rd, the 71st Infantry Brigade continued advancing down the west coast into the southern part of the island. Japanese resistance became gradually more significant as the Indian troops moved inland. Still, the Indian forces continued to make steady but decisive advances for the remainder of January as they pushed the Japanese forces further south. As the 71st Indian Infantry Brigade continued their attack, the Royal Marine Force landed on Chiduba Island, about 6.2 miles southwest of Ramri, and found it uninhabited.
Unbelievable.
Meanwhile, the Indian Brigade was stopped by a defiant Japanese garrison, but resisted with prodigious tenacity. Then, on February 1st, the approximately 900 Japanese defenders were flanked by the Royal Marine Forces that arrived to support the Indian soldiers. With little options but to surrender or flee through the nearby mangrove swamp, the Japanese opted to escape and would deeply regret it.
Instead of dying at bullets,
a fatal decision. Blinded by a fanatical doctrine of never surrendering, the Japanese commander made the atrocious decision of retreating through the marsh in an ambitious effort to join a more significant Japanese force located further south on the island. The Japanese men were already severely depleted and exhausted from weeks of relentless fighting, and many were injured or starved. Furthermore, they were no strangers to the ruthlessness of the Burma terrain. After years of fighting in the region, they knew the area was infested with disease-carrying mosquitoes, leeches, and enormous saltwater crocodiles. Still, they found it preferable to test their luck in the dangerous swamp, rather than humiliate themselves by surrendering to the British. What's more, it would not be the first time they traversed crocodile-infested territory, and they considered the likelihood of an assault substantially low. Little did they know that the number of injured men and their utter state of exhaustion would make for a very different outcome than on other occasions.
Oh, wow.
The swamp was home to thousands of South Asian saltwater crocodiles, the largest reptile in the world and one of the most aggressive predators in the animal kingdom. Reaching lengths of over 23 feet, the gargantuan beasts display the most powerful bite of any animal in the world, with as much as 3,690 pounds force. Once the predator clenches its jaw around a prey, it is highly unlikely that the victim will survive the encounter. They are known for hunting big creatures regularly, including sambar deer, wild boar, Malayan tapirs, kangaroos, feral pigs, humans, orangutans, dingoes, and tigers. The Japanese soldiers were now walking into a terrifying nightmare. A unique battle. Reports of what happened next are varied and contradictory. However, the Allied actions after the Japanese withdrew are well documented. The British forces immediately moved to surround the entire swamp to prevent the Japanese.
I hope I don't have to edit about what we're getting ready to see edited out of this, because YouTube's not going to fly with any leg chomping or wrestling and twisting with alligators.
From
and
where
humans.
this is headed, I can't believe there hasn't been a movie made about this.
This is insane right here.
And if there has, how did I not see it?
This
I mean,
footage is crazy. The footage we're watching is crazy.
Yeah.
Beside a movie should be made.
Yeah.
I'm saying this footage right here
Oh,
is
yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
I wonder if Dark Docs made this documentary and showing it, or if that's his voice. You know what I'm saying, as a narrator, or if this is just something he copied and put on his doc because he's a Dark Doc channel or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But if he did, man, shout out.
Yeah.
This is fire.
Put together very well.
Man, ain't it though? Let's go.
Yeah.
From escaping, even if they made it through. For the following days and nights, the Allies reported continued screams coming from the swamp, accompanied by the constant ring of rifle fire. With no Allied forces pursuing the Japanese into the swamp,
Imagine
the British
trying to shoot
assumed
an
the enemy was
alligator off
fighting
you while you're
against the
fighting
local
it.
saltwater crocodiles.
Grip on
Naturalist
With a
Bruce
handgun or
Wright,
whatever they got.
who participated in the battle, described the hellish nights they witnessed from afar. Quote, "That night of February 19th, 1945, was the most horrible that any member of the NL crews ever
No
experienced.
strike. No strike.
The scattered rifle
No
shots in
strike.
the pitch-black swamp, punctured by the screams
Come
of
on
wounded
now.
men, made a cacophony of
Show
hell
it.
No
that has rarely
strike.
been
They're getting
duplicated
away.
on Earth.
They're getting away.
Of
Come
about
on.
1,000 Japanese soldiers
Wow,
that entered
look
the
at
swamps
that.
of Ramri, only about 20 were found alive.
I would think.
The
What did
British
he
made
say?
frantic efforts to
Go
help the
back.
Japanese, taking interpreters into the fringes of the swamp to plead for them. The British made frantic efforts to help the Japanese, taking interpreters into the fringes of the swamp to plead for
Further?
them. Of about 1,000 Japanese,
Oh,
punctured
okay.
by the screams of wounded men, made a cacophony of hell that has rarely been duplicated on Earth. Of about 1,000 Japanese soldiers that entered the swamps of Ramri, only about 20 were found alive.
20.
The British
Out of
made
doubt.
frantic efforts to help the Japanese, taking interpreters into the fringes of the swamp to plead for them to come out, but none of them did. Some reports from supposed survivors depict a scary scenario. As the troops advanced through the swamp, their health and morale quickly plummeted. The murky waters reached all the way to the soldiers' chests, and the mosquito
think a
swarms
group
and
like
lack
that
of
was
food
scared.
soon resulted in
Came
countless
up, I guess.
soldiers plodding behind in a delusional, exhausted state.
Yeah,
At first,
like a herd,
the crocodile attacks were few and far between, with the troopers able to respond and put down the attackers. Still, as starvation, injuries, and confusion began to take their toll, the situation grew out of control, and chaos spread among the ranks as the forces became disorganized and frightened.
The buddy system.
As the days
Your buddy's
passed,
got-
the soldiers who still had
the
some
buddy-
energy
the
opted to
buddy's
get out
got-
of the
that was
swamp
almost
as quickly as
strangled.
possible.
Blip, blip. I almost said blip, blip.
Controversy. The exact nature of what really happened in that swamp remains a mystery. The British
Okay.
managed to capture 20 Japanese survivors, who later described the horrors they witnessed. Later reports claim that up to 480 Japanese soldiers survived the ordeal, meaning that anywhere between 420 to 880 soldiers perished inside the swamp. The accounts of the British and the Japanese survivors led the Guinness Book of Records to consider the event as the highest number of fatalities in a crocodile attack in human history. But although there is no doubt that several attacks took place, historians have recently questioned the scale of the reptile involvement, arguing that the reptilians often feed only once every few months, as they require time to digest the large prey they swallow. It is thus improbable that so many crocodiles were hungry at the very moment the Japanese entered the swamp.
No, there's thousands of them.
They also point out that if the saltwater crocodile population was as large as to hunt
Right.
down 420 Japanese soldiers, the mammal population in the area would have been eradicated long ago, and the reptiles would have starved. Scholars now attribute most casualties to drownings, starvation, and disease, considering the crocodile attacks a minor portion of the losses. Technical results. The seizure of Ramri Island was vital to the Allied efforts on the Burma front.
Yeah.
Huh.
This is moving on into the war. Wow, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Now,
Wow.
regardless of how many were
Yeah,
taken out by
regardless of whether it was 480 or 880,
yeah.
You know, the difference there really doesn't matter a lot.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about the event. I think that's what
Wow.
we're talking about. Wow.
And when they were saying about, they could hear them screams.
And then the screams at night, and then the gunfire.
Yeah. Tell me there were just a few.
Does a crocodile make a sound when it takes a shell? Does it scream? I wonder if it screams.
It probably hisses.
Can you imagine?
I mean, I know alligators
Can you imagine
hiss.
it? Ah, boom! Or your buddy having to shoot something off of you. Wow, they said the rest of the soldiers would react accordingly and and take care of the attackers.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of gunfire going on getting across there. But 1,000 men to cross that water, that would take a bit.
I mean, for them to only get 20 out, I can't see.
I can't see that being the case because they talked about the population and what the mammals would do around them if there was that many crocodiles really at that scene.
Yeah.
That the forestry around it wouldn't be what, blah, blah. There's scientific facts that prove that really there wasn't 800. It couldn't have been 880 eaten by alligators. Died in the event, yes.
Sure, yeah.
But probably by drowning, sickness, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would say if we're going to sit here and just call a fact what it might be, 480.
When they said there's thousands of crocodiles, I could see.
And what if their number's wrong and it was just
100 of them,
getting down?
Crocodiles.
And not getting eaten, just getting killed.
Yeah.
What if they didn't sit there and eat them all? What if they just got killed and floated off in the current?
Or they just tried to yank them in and failed, but they yanked off a leg, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What if they died later on because they got, the bite got infections and all that stuff?
Wow.
And does the whole story really get told? Because a story can be bad and it's never told in history as bad as it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They always play it down. The responsible people always play it down. And there's a chance that was played down.
There's a lot of history that is, downplayed, whitewashed like that.
I need to invest in a cough button. Boy, I don't know what happened to me.
Wow.
Through that whole damn video I was coughing. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, there's another one under the belt. I guess that was pretty crazy.
Wow.
I guess until next time, we'll see you. Peace.
Smile.